I'm Dr. Deb Butler, and you are listening to Thinner Peace in Menopause and Beyond. This is episode number 504. Stay tuned. Welcome to Thinner Peace in Menopause and Beyond. This is Dr. Deb Butler, Master Life and Weight Coach, and as always, your coach. If you're a woman and you're smart and you're successful and you've been struggling with weight your whole life, and now menopause is making it harder than ever, and you are ready to make this the last time you ever have to go on a diet again, then this podcast is for you. Stay tuned. Well, hello, all my dear friends all over the world. We're into the holiday season, and as I was talking about the master classes, and I call Thanksgiving your Masterclass 101. Masterclass meaning a great learning place to learn more about you and how to evolve into the person that you want to be by being around things, people, places, food that trigger you, and being aware of those triggers enough to help reform your brain to be able to react and think something different that actually creates more peace and less negativity. So I don't know how your Thanksgiving was. Mine was pretty peaceful, but I know for a lot of people it brings up all kinds of stuff. Now, the next masterclass, which is for many of you Christmas, Hanukkah, or somewhere in between, is another big masterclass, and I call it the advanced masterclass of the year. And if you're really into wanting to find, like in Buddhism, we talk about your basic goodness, that we're all good inside, and for us to realize that about ourselves, for you to be able to find that in yourself and to recognize it and to be aware of it, and at the same time, what gets in the way of you feeling that. Nothing like a good holiday with a lot of family, friends. You would think it would be a wonderful opportunity to feel peaceful, but actually it seems like it's a wonderful opportunity to see what gets you going. And the advanced masterclass is coming up, so I want to make sure that the podcast that I do going forward will help you in these scenarios, especially the advanced masterclass of the season. So what I want to do today is I'm going to play you one of my podcast episodes that I've done that's been highly downloaded, and I've been asked so many questions about it because I do think that it is the key to helping you understand yourself better, become more aware of what goes on inside of you, just by realizing this simple, age-old Buddhist technique of what gets you going. I say that's more not Buddhist-like, but it's kind of like just the way that we talk. We talk about what gets us triggered, what makes us react. And in these master classes, the best thing that we can do is, instead of reacting, we can become much more aware of what our minds are thinking about the situations that are causing negative emotion. So what I want to do for this episode is play you one of my episodes, one of 3, on urges and the age-old technique in Buddhism of what they call Shempa, which is being hooked, which is what happens in these master classes is we get hooked and then we start running with it without becoming aware of what's going on in our mind, and that all the control is within us and not outside of us. So whatever you do when you listen to my podcast, this is going to be a good one. So you might want to get out some paper and pencil and take notes and get ready for the masterclass of the year. And please, 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 whatever else you do, make sure that you are very, very kind to yourself while you're listening to this podcast. And probably the best way to be very, very kind to yourself is to become much, much more aware of the people, places, and things around you that get you to react in a negative way, in a way in which you don't want to, and to be able to see yourself more clearly and to recognize your own basic goodness. So sit back, enjoy on urges. Hello, everybody. How are you today? I'm in Belize. It's winter in Belize, and let me tell you what, now that I've experienced all the seasons of being on a beach in a tropical island, let me tell you what, winter is wonderful. It's about, I don't know, it's cold. People around here are wearing sweatshirts because it's 76 degrees. And I guess the high might be about 80 or something like that, but I'm really cold. I'm getting so used to being on a tropical island that 76 degrees feels cold to me. That's what I just think it's unbelievable. Or as they say in Belize, unbelievable. Anyway, as I look out at the beautiful Caribbean Sea today and the beautiful breezes, if you're somewhere cold and it's snowing, I know, I've seen the weather. It doesn't look good out there. Come to Belize. But I digress. I have something very special I want to talk to you about, and I teased you in my intro today about what does a screaming toddler have to do with you overeating. And this is what I want to pass on to you today. I think it's going to be like one of my best episodes ever, because as I learn more about the psychology behind why we overeat and how the brain works, I think the more that we understand how this works, the better chance we have of changing it. So here's what I want to offer you, and this is something that you may not know about me, but I have had quite a few different occupations in my lifetime. I am now a master life and weight coach. Before that, I was a doctor of chiropractic. And before that, I was a early childhood educator. So my first actual degree was in early childhood education. And one of the things that I was really, really good at was teaching parents, because I used to work in daycare centers and I used to give parents advice on how to discipline their children. One of the things that used to happen a lot is that parents would come in and they would be beside themselves because their kids were either screaming or throwing tantrums because they wanted something. And the parents ultimately would always give in to it. And actually what would happen is the kids just their behavior got worse and worse and worse. And the parents just felt like they were terrible parents. The children were terrible children, and they just couldn't do it right. When in reality, they didn't understand childhood behavior, or any type of behavior. Like, who in the heck teaches you this, right? And what I told them is that when your child is screaming at you and doing unwanted behavior, like throwing a tantrum. Have you ever been around a kid when they're throwing a tantrum? Not good. The worst thing that you could possibly do is give in to it. Because when you do, the child and the child's brain believes that that's the way they get what they want. So, of course, if that behavior works, then they just turn it on even more. The answer to that in early childhood education is you don't give in to that type of behavior if you don't like that kind of behavior. If you want to teach your children how to scream and yell to get what they want, and you have to be around that for 18 years, then you keep giving in to that kind of behavior. However, if you want to teach your children that there are better ways to get what they want, or that you also teach them that they can't always get what they want, and sometimes the things that they want aren't necessarily good for them. And as the parent, you are in charge of deciding that, especially when they're very young. then by not giving in to unwanted behavior, screaming and yelling, you teach the child and their brain that it doesn't work. And you do that by allowing them to scream and yell, and you do not respond to it. You allow them to do that, and you do not give in to it. Right? So that's early childhood education. If any of you needed help with your children, I hope that helped. Now, what does this have to do with you overeating in menopause or not? This is what I want to offer you. I want to talk to you about urges today. An urge is a feeling. Okay? This is what I want you to see first, because most of you think that what you have to change is what you do around food. So, for instance, if there's potato chips there and you don't want them and you feel like you have to eat them, you try to stop yourself from eating them, right? And it's really hard because you have this strong feeling or urge to want to eat them. You have all tried not eating potato chips, and maybe you can do it for a while, but sooner or later, that feeling or urge gets so strong again that you give into it. And here's what I want to offer you. You can't stop eating potato chips if you don't know how to deal with the urges. Because if you remember when I taught you the way the mind works, which I called the model, is that a thought, what you think in your mind, creates a feeling or a vibration in your body that causes you to do an A or an action that causes a result. So the action is the eating of the potato chips. But if you're eating the potato chips is because there is a thought and a feeling before that. That feeling when you want to eat the potato chips is actually called an urge or a desire. An urge or a desire is always created by a thought in your mind. And this is really good news for all of you because I want to compare your urges to want to eat something that you don't want to eat because you're not hungry or because it's not something that's going to fuel your body, then I want you to listen up. That urge feels urgent, like it must be attended to. And when you feel that urge and you give into that urge, you strengthen that thought cycle. Ooh, that looks good. That's a thought. Or, ooh, I have to eat that. Or, ooh, I can't resist chocolate. Or like mine, oh, it's potato chips. I have to eat the whole bag. Those are all thoughts that are running around in your mind that you're thinking. It starts out consciously, but if you've been doing it for years, it's an unconscious cycle that creates urges that feel irresistible. And then you go against your will because you feel like you have to. That is what an urge or desire is. Now, this is what I want to offer you. The way to stop overeating or to eating when you're not hungry is how you deal with that urge. With a child, let's talk about a toddler. When a toddler is in a grocery store with you and she wants candy, and you don't want to give them candy every time they go to the grocery store, but they start screaming and yelling and you're embarrassed, so you give them the candy. What do you think is going to happen the next time you go to the grocery store? You got it. They're going to scream. And if you don't give in, they're going to scream louder because they already know that this works. An urge inside of you is like a screaming toddler, making you think you must give into it because it's really uncomfortable. Now, here's the thing that I want you to understand with your urge is that if you give into it as if it were a screaming toddler screaming for candy, you strengthen that feeling. So the way you strengthen it is you reward it. And how do you reward it? You reward it by eating something that this urge makes you feel like you have to have. And then the cycle perpetuates itself. Does that make sense to you? So when you feel an urge, this is the thing. The problem really in overeating is quite simple. If and when you see food that is not nutritious or you're not hungry for it, you just don't eat it. It's as simple as that. That is actually the easiest part. You just don't take a bite. The hard part about all of this is that then you're left with this feeling or urge. And that, my dear, is very, very uncomfortable. As if you're with a child in a grocery store who is screaming for candy, and you decide that there's going to be a new way, and you do not give them the candy. It is going to be quite uncomfortable because they're going to keep screaming for a while. Now, how do you deal with a screaming toddler, or how do you deal with a screaming irresistible urge? They are the same thing, right? Like metaphors of the same thing. You have three choices. And what I'm going to tell you is what the proper answer is. And this is all psychology too, but it's amazing how much it relates to early childhood. Okay, you got a screaming toddler. One, you can comply and give them the candy, which is going to strengthen that screaming behavior. You're going to have a bratty kid every time you go to the grocery store, and you are going to hate going to the grocery store. You're going to feel bad about yourself, about your children. Okay. So that's the first thing you could do, is you could comply with the screaming child or comply with the urge. You could give into it. If you give into it, you are strengthening that urge for whatever it is that you're going to eat. And know that the urge is always coming from a thought in your mind, because an urge is a feeling that's created in your mind. So the first thing you can do is comply with the urge. The second thing you can do, which a lot of you try to do, is you try to resist the urge. If it's a screaming toddler and you're resisting the toddler and they're melting down, you start screaming back at them. You're resisting that type of behavior. You're screaming back, you're talking in your mind, and it's feeling worse and worse inside of you, and they're getting worse and worse. That's called resisting a feeling. And many of you try to resist what you're feeling and don't know it. It just feels bad. So you may or may not eat it. You may or may not give the candy to your child, but it is torment. The third thing that you can do, and I want to give you a hint, because this is the answer. You can allow it to be there. Allowing a feeling is very different than resisting a feeling. However, it doesn't feel good at all. If a child is screaming at the top of their lungs because they want candy, and you allow them to scream in peace, that's the difference. You just allow them to do what they're doing, and you're in a grocery store on top of it. The child's not getting the candy. And also what's happening is you're sitting with a very uncomfortable feeling. If you do that, every time you go into the grocery store, you will extinguish the behavior of the child screaming, because it doesn't work. And pretty soon, the child stops screaming for candy, period. With an urge, if you allow an urge to be there, which means that you sit with the uncomfortable feeling of not giving in to the urge, you're allowing it. What you're left with is a very uncomfortable feeling, and it is uncomfortable. If you do that multiple times, you end up extinguishing that urge.
because you're not giving into it. And you are allowing it to be there. And pretty soon, the whole thought cycle dissipates. So for instance, for me with potato chips, I didn't know this at the time, but now that I can see what was going on, I used to have a thought that wherever potato chips were around, I had to eat them all. That was just a thought that I had. Probably started out conscious somewhere along the line, and pretty soon I just started believing it because I thought it so much. And that thought always created this urge or this desire that was so irresistible, I had to eat all the potato chips. Now, once I started, and this is really what happened, once I started sitting with the urge without giving into it and just allowing it, allowing the discomfort to sit inside of me, that feeling dissipated over time. So that now, when I look at potato chips, I don't have that thought anymore. And the reason I don't have that thought anymore is because I allowed the urge to sit with me. I was able to look at the thoughts that were creating these irresistible urges, right? I did a lot of coaching around this. And now what do potato chips mean to me? They're just potato chips. For somebody who has stopped smoking, there was a time where the urge was so irresistible, that's what they say, you can't resist it, that you had to give into it. Every time you sit with an urge and you don't light up a cigarette, it gets easier and easier and easier. But in the beginning, it is miserable. You just have to know that. Except if you know, like what I'm saying to you right now, that in your own mind, it will get better. I can sit with this. You teach yourself that you can feel a feeling all the way through without giving into it. You can sit with a toddler that's throwing a tantrum and allow that tantrum to do whatever it's going to do without giving in to whatever that tantrum is about. Candy, cookies, whatever it is that they believe a tantrum will give them. You stop it. And that is what I'm offering you today. The possibility of knowing that an urge is a feeling that comes from your mind and your thinking that creates overeating. And that overeating can be stopped by allowing yourself to feel the uncomfortable feeling of an urge. And every single time you don't give in to the urge, you allow the urge to be there, it will have less and less power over you until pretty soon it has nothing. It is extinguished, is what they talk about in psychology and psychological behavior, is the behavior is extinguished. You know, I got to tell you that I think this is some of the most important work that I'm going to teach this year, is all about urge and desire and how it creates overeating, and that you can change the way you eat from now until doomsday. But if you don't know how to feel a feeling, especially a negative feeling, without eating it, then you are only going to perpetuate that behavior. You know, I want to pop in just a little bit at the end of that episode of getting unstuck from the urge, because I really want to impart to you that if you still, after listening to this, just feel like you just can't do it on your own. And believe me, there are some people, they learn this, they say it makes sense, it's logical, but when it comes to managing their own primitive mind, it seems impossible. Listen, you are not alone. And that is why I have created this unbelievable individual customized program for people who really want to get to the next step and are committed and willing to do the work. If you're one of those people, you can have a mini session with me and you and I can talk for 30 minutes about what my program is about. If I think it can help you, and if it can, I can tell you all of the details. So please go to
drdebbutler.com/work with me and set up an appointment. Do it fast because I don't have many of these and they go quickly. So if you don't want to wait until Christmas, you better go do it now. And speaking of Christmas, how would you like to have these urges under control by Christmas? It's a very, very good reason to talk to me now. So listen, you guys, as I'm ending this, you know what I'm going to say to you. I want you to be very, very kind to yourself in every way possible. See you next week.
To get a free copy of Dr. Deb's companion workbook with all the tools, homeworks, and discussions that she uses in her podcast with all of her private clients, please go to drdebbutler.com/change. This will make it even easier to follow along with her in future broadcasts.
If you've been following my podcast and you're loving all the tools that I teach you, but you're just not sure that you can do it or apply it by yourself, then please go to drdebbutler.com/work with me. And you can find out if the program that I do and the coaching that I do will help you get to where you want to be, to learn all the tools that I teach and be able to make it a part of your life. Just go to drdebbutler.com/work with me. You can set up a free 30-minute mini session.